The vote was quiet. No shouts, no weapons drawn, no dramatic declarations echoing through the Galactic Senate chamber. Just lights shifting from amber to cold blue as each species registered its decision. I stood alone at the center dais, hands clasped behind my back, eyes forward, watching an entire galaxy decide my world's fate with the casual detachment of administrators approving a trade tariff. When the final tally resolved, the chamber chimed softly, almost politely. Earth had lost. Around me, delegates relaxed. Crests lowered. Frills settled. Several exchanged gestures of relief. To them, this was procedure. Earth had requested intervention rights, security guarantees, and equal protection under Senate law. Earth had argued precedent, sacrifice, contribution. Earth had reminded them of wars fought together, of supply lines defended, of lives spent holding the line when others could not. And the Senate, vast and ancient, had decided humanity was inconvenient. I felt it then, the subtle shift. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. The moment you realize a conversation is over. The speaker floated forward, translucent limbs glowing with institutional authority. The vote is concluded, it announced. Earth's petition is denied. The Senate recognizes no obligation to intervene in sole jurisdiction. This session. I stepped forward. The sound of my boots against the obsidian floor echoed far louder than it should have. Several delegates turned, surprised. Humans were usually quiet at this stage. We accepted losses with grim nods, filed appeals, adjusted strategies. We did not interrupt the speaker. Before you adjourn, I said, my voice steady, carrying without amplification, there is something you should understand. A ripple of irritation passed through the chamber. The speaker paused, more out of protocol than respect. You have exhausted your allotted. You voted against Earth. I continued, cutting through the words without raising my tone. You believe this ends our quest, that it resolves the matter. I looked around, meeting eyes that had already begun to dismiss me. It doesn't. Murmurs spread. Defensive fields brightened slightly. A few security drones adjusted position, more out of habit than concern. No one feared me. That was the mistake. You see this chamber as the highest authority, I said. The final arbiter of right, protection, and consequence. Earth once believed that too. I allowed myself a small pause. We no longer do. The speaker's glow sharpened. Is this a threat? I almost laughed. Almost. No, I said. It's a clarification. I activated the data slate at my wrist. The air above the dais filled with light. Not weapon schematics. Not fleet movements. Faces. Human faces. Soldiers, medics, engineers. Names scrolling beside casualty figures the Senate had classified as acceptable losses. Worlds defended beyond treaty boundaries. Evacuations run without reimbursement. Wars entered because someone had to stand where no one else would. You voted based on stability projections, I said quietly, on the assumption that Earth, isolated, will comply. That we will endure pressure, sanctions, and border incidents until we break or submit. My gaze hardened. That assumption is wrong. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was no longer standard procedure. Earth does not escalate for advantage, I continued. We escalate when lines are crossed. You have just crossed one. The speaker tried to regain control. The Senate will not be intimidated by. By what? I asked. A species that has bled for you? That learned survival without consensus. I leaned forward slightly. You think this vote was power. It wasn't. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. It was permission, I said. And humanity does not ask twice. They adjourned the session anyway. Of course they did. The speaker declared procedural closure, security fields rose, and the delegates dispersed in controlled silence, pretending composure while fear threaded through every movement. I remained where I was until the chamber emptied, until the last hover platform vanished into the vaulted exits, and only the Senate's artificial stars remained burning overhead. Then my calm chimed once, sharp and deliberate. Earth command. They had been listening the entire time. You were heard, the voice said. No titles. No ceremony. Just acknowledgement. I know, I replied. So were they. The connection cut. Nothing more needed to be said. Humanity had learned long ago that declarations were not made with speeches. They were made with preparation. As I left the chamber, alarms did not sound. No guards moved to stop me. The Senate believed restraint was still possible. They believed this was politics. That belief would not survive the cycle. Within the hour, the vote had reached Seoul. Markets reacted first, as they always did. Trade algorithms spiked, insurance networks froze, and colonial administrations requested clarification they would never receive. But beneath the surface noise, deeper systems awakened. Contingency frameworks, buried under centuries of treaties and cooperative doctrine, came online one by one. Humanity had never dismantled them. We had simply stopped advertising their existence. I arrived at the human embassy as the first response wave initiated. The building's exterior remained diplomatic, glass, light, symbols of unity, but below ground, the atmosphere shifted. Tactical rooms filled. Analysts moved without orders. There was no panic, no raised voices. Just grim efficiency. This was not a surprise. It was a scenario rehearsed so often it had become muscle memory. They think this is leverage, one strategist said, eyes fixed on cascading data streams. They'll start with proxy pressure, border raids, sanctioned harassment through third parties. They always do, I said. They assume patience is weakness. A projection flared, showing the outer systems. Neutral fleets adjusting courses. Opportunists sniffing blood. Former allies calculating how much they could take before anyone noticed. The Senate's vote had not created this behavior. It had merely removed the pretense restraining it. Authorize Phase 1, I said. No one asked for confirmation codes. No one hesitated. Phase 1 was visibility. Every human fleet previously classified as auxiliary re-registered openly. Shipyards dropped stealth protocols. Defense platforms powered up and broadcast readiness without targeting locks. Not threats. Signals. Humanity announcing that it was no longer pretending to be smaller than it was. Within minutes, responses flooded in. Demands. Inquiries. Warnings couched in diplomatic language. I ignored them all. Words were no longer the medium. Phase 2 followed before the galaxy could adapt. Human trade corridors rerouted. Aid convoys recalled. Protection contracts voided under clauses no one else had bothered to read. Entire regions of space suddenly realized the invisible scaffolding holding their economies together had been built by human hands. And those hands had withdrawn. The first shots were not fired by us. They never are. A fringe coalition testing resolve struck a mining outpost on the edge of Seoul jurisdiction. Minimal damage. Symbolic force. A probe, nothing more. The Senate issued a statement urging restraint on all sides. Earth did not reply with words. We responded with precision. A single task group emerged from dark transit, neutralized the attacking fleet, and disabled every weapons platform in the aggressor's home system without planetary bombardment. Clean. Surgical. Irrefutable. Then we transmitted the after-action report to every Senate channel, unencrypted. This is restraint, the message concluded. I stood in the embassy command hall as confirmations rolled in. Systems secure. Fleets aligned. Humanity no longer waiting for permission. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Senate was scrambling, realizing too late that their vote had not constrained us. It had freed us. And this was still only the beginning. The galaxy did not panic all at once. Panic is noisy, irrational, obvious. What followed the Senate's mistake was quieter and far more dangerous. Silence stretched across trade lanes that had never known it. Fleets stopped answering hails. Entire systems went dark under the guise of maintenance and internal review. Everyone waited to see what humanity would do next, because now it was undeniable. We were no longer reacting. We were shaping events. I watched it unfold from Earth's forward command node, buried deep beneath continents that had survived worse than this. Reports streamed in faster than anyone's mind could process, but I didn't need details. I understood patterns. The first phase had shattered assumptions. The second had demonstrated reach. The third would force a choice. Former allies fractured first. They always do. Species that had relied on our patrols began negotiating temporary arrangements with our rivals, assuming neutrality would shield them. Others attempted appeasement, offering partial concessions, restricted access, diluted apologies. The Senate issued another resolution, this one urging dialogue. It passed overwhelmingly. It meant nothing. Humanity did not attend. Instead, we released archives. Not propaganda. Not threats. Records. Battle logs. Evacuation footage. Casualty counts from wars officially labeled joint operations, where human losses exceeded projections while others withdrew under revised risk assessments. The galaxy saw, many for the first time, what our restraint had cost us. Reactions varied. Some were horrified. Some defensive. A few indignant. But none could deny the data. Humanity had been the buffer. The wall everyone leaned on while insisting it was unnecessary. And now the wall had stepped aside. The real test came 3 days later. A coordinated incursion. Multiple systems. Multiple flags. Plausibly deniable, Senate-compliant aggression designed to fracture our attention. They believed scale would slow us. That dividing our focus would force negotiation. It was a familiar mistake. We had planned for it centuries ago. I authorized distributed response. No grand fleet movements. No dramatic declarations. Human commanders acted independently within shared intent parameters, adapting faster than centralized enemies could coordinate. Strike groups appeared where least expected, dismantling logistics hubs, command relays, and weapon depots with brutal efficiency. We did not occupy. We did not conquer. We removed the ability to continue. Civilian harm was avoided wherever possible. That detail mattered even now. Especially now. Humanity was not abandoning its principles. We were enforcing them. As resistance collapsed, something else began to spread. Fear, yes, but also understanding. Neutral systems watched aggressors fail catastrophically, not through overwhelming numbers, but through decisiveness and adaptability. Humanity did not match force with force. We matched it with inevitability. Messages flooded in. Ceasefire requests. Emergency summits. Back-channel pleas for mediation. The Senate attempted to reassert authority, calling for an immediate halt to hostilities. Again, humanity did not respond publicly. Instead, we transmitted a single communiqué to every recognized government. This is not war, it read. This is correction. The effect was profound. Some powers withdrew immediately, unwilling to test further. Others doubled down, pride overriding reason. Those were dealt with next. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just completely. I walked the command floor as updates arrived, watching officers execute operations with a calm precision born of long memory. This was not vengeance. It was survival doctrine activated at scale. Humanity had learned, through blood and loss, that delayed response invited extinction. By the end of the cycle, the galaxy had changed. Borders meant less. Treaties meant only what enforcement made them mean. And at the center of every calculation now sat one immutable factor: human response time. I knew what came next. The Senate would attempt reconciliation from a position of fear. They would offer concessions they once denied, hoping to restore balance. They did not yet understand that balance had shifted permanently, because humanity was no longer asking to belong. We were deciding what the galaxy would be allowed to become. The Senate reconvened an emergency session under conditions they had never recorded in their long history: absent consensus, fractured authority, and fear no protocol could suppress. I was invited this time, not summoned. Invited. The distinction mattered to them. It meant they still believed symbolism could repair what consequence had broken. I accepted, not out of obligation, but because it was time they heard the truth without intermediaries. The chamber looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but perceptually. Power has a way of shrinking rooms when it changes hands. Delegates filled their platforms cautiously, defensive fields active, advisors whispering in frantic patterns. The speaker's glow was muted, its movements restrained. When I entered, the chamber fell silent without command. That silence was real. "You have acted without mandate," the speaker began, voice carefully neutral. "Systems destabilized. Governments collapsed. Lives disrupted. This body demands explanation." I stepped onto the dais, the same spot where Earth had been denied protection. "No," I said calmly. "You demand reassurance. Explanation implies authority. You forfeited that." A ripple of outrage flared and died just as quickly. No one interrupted. "You are experiencing consequence," I continued. "Not because humanity seeks dominion, but because you mistook restraint for submission. You believed safety was inherent, guaranteed by process. It never was. It was maintained." A delegate rose, trembling. "You threaten the entire galactic order." I shook my head. "We revealed its weakness." I gestured, and the chamber filled with projections. Halted invasions, stabilized borders, restored civilian corridors. Everywhere humanity had intervened since the vote. "You call this chaos," I said. "But observe the pattern. Aggression stopped. Exploitation failed. Systems once preyed upon are stable for the first time in centuries." The speaker pulsed uneasily. "At what cost?" "At the cost you refused to pay," I replied. "Responsibility." Silence deepened. Some delegates avoided my gaze. Others stared openly, forced to reconcile ideology with evidence. "You are afraid," I said. "Not of us. Of irrelevance. Because for the first time, the galaxy has seen order enforced without your permission." A murmur spread, but no one denied it. "We are not here to replace you," I continued. "We are here to set a boundary. Earth will no longer accept votes that endanger its people while preserving your comfort. We will no longer subsidize stability for those unwilling to defend it." The speaker gathered itself. "What does humanity demand?" I leaned forward slightly. "Nothing." Confusion rippled through the chamber. "We will act where we must," I clarified. "You may align with that reality or resist it. But understand this. Resistance will not be debated. It will be addressed." One by one, defensive fields dimmed. Not in surrender, but in recognition. "This body was built to prevent war," the speaker said quietly. "And it succeeded," I replied. "Until you forgot why." I turned to leave without waiting for dismissal. Behind me, voices rose, not in anger, but in urgent recalculation. Alliances would shift tonight. Doctrines would be rewritten. The galaxy would spend generations studying this moment, arguing whether humanity had saved it or doomed it. I did not care. History's opinion had never stopped a threat. As my transport lifted from the station, long-range sensors lit up with new movement. Fleets regrouping. Signals converging. Not Senate-aligned. Something older. Something patient. The kind of power that only emerges when order fractures. Humanity had corrected the balance. But the galaxy, now exposed, was drawing attention. And something in the dark had noticed. The first warning did not come from the Senate, nor from any ally or rival we had catalogued. It came from deep space arrays on the edge of mapped territory, sensors older than most civilizations, built by humanity back when we still believed early detection could prevent catastrophe. They registered a pattern that should not have existed: synchronized movement across light years without relay lag, mass displacement without signature drives, intent without broadcast. I was in transit when the alert reached me. The stars outside the viewport seemed unchanged, indifferent, but the data overlay told a different story. Something vast was shifting beyond the periphery, something that had waited for instability before stirring. The Senate's fracture had not merely changed politics. It had altered the galaxy's noise profile. Silence and chaos, it turned out, were invitations. Earth Command convened within minutes. No panic. No denial. The room carried the same atmosphere it had during the Senate vote, during the first retaliation, during every moment humanity had crossed from hesitation into action. Calm, grim focus. These entities, an analyst began, voice tight, do not match any known civilization. No diplomacy markers. No territorial claims. They are dormant predators. Until now, I said. The projection shifted, showing regions where stars dimmed subtly, energy siphoned without collapse, matter rearranged rather than destroyed. This was not conquest. It was harvesting. And it had gone unnoticed because the galaxy had been too busy arguing about votes and borders to look outward. They're reacting to destabilization, another voice added. They move when resistance fragments. I thought of the Senate chamber, of platforms dimming, of authority dissolving under pressure. They've been watching, I said, waiting for someone to blink. Humanity had not blinked, but the galaxy had. Orders moved faster than words. Defensive lines recalibrated. Exploration fleets rearmed. Archives cracked open, pulling theories once dismissed as speculative fear-mongering. Humanity had always prepared for the worst-case scenario, not because we expected it, but because history taught us that expectation was irrelevant. Messages poured in from across known space. Panic now, real panic. Systems begging for guidance. Former rivals requesting joint command. The Senate attempted to issue an emergency directive, but it was lost in the noise. Authority, once fractured, could not be reassembled on demand. Earth did not wait. We transmitted a single, open-channel message, not to governments, but to populations. Every language, every frequency. There is a threat beyond your borders. It does not negotiate. It does not recognize sovereignty. Humanity is engaging it. You may assist or evacuate. Delay will cost lives. Some listened. Some hesitated. Some still argued. Humanity moved regardless. As fleets aligned and weapons powered, I felt the familiar weight settle in my chest. Not fear. Responsibility. We had forced the galaxy to confront its illusions, and in doing so, had revealed something lurking behind them. Order had been brittle. Now it was gone. What replaced it would be tested immediately. Long-range feeds flickered as the first human task group made contact. Not battle, observation. The unknown mass shifted in response, patterns adjusting, awareness blooming. For the first time, the thing in the dark acknowledged resistance. Contact confirmed. Came the report. They're adapting. I stared at the data, at movements that bent physics in ways that defied our models, and understood with cold clarity that everything before this had been prologue. The Senate's vote. Humanity's retaliation. The galaxy's recalibration. All of it had led here. We had stepped into the role no one else would take. Enforcer. Shield. Provocation. The galaxy had learned what humanity was willing to do to protect itself. Now it would learn what we were willing to do to protect everything else. As the first shots, real shots, charged across impossible distances, alarms rose throughout command. Projections fractured. Timelines collapsed into uncertainty. I allowed myself one breath before issuing the next order. Full engagement, I said. All contingencies. Beyond the viewport, a star went dark.